So AI is literally everywhere, right? The companies behind it are hitting these just astronomical valuations, hundreds of billions of dollars. But it begs the question, is any of this real sustainable value? Or are we all just living inside a massive tech bubble that's about to pop?
All right, let's really get into it. First, we'll tackle the big question. Is this even a bubble? Then we're going to dig into the real, and I mean real, cost of making AI. We'll pull back the curtain on how your subscription is being secretly paid for, map out this whole AI gold rush ecosystem, and finally, ask the big one. What happens if, or, when, it all comes crashing down?
You've seen the headlines. It seems like any company just has to whisper the letters A and I on an investor call, and bam, its stock price shoots through the roof. It has all the classic signs of a bubble, for sure. Feels a lot like the dot-com era or the crypto craze.
But here's the thing that feels so different this time. Unlike some of those past bubbles that were built on pure speculation, AI has this immediate, tangible value that pretty much anyone can see and use. I mean, when my mom is using ChatGPT to look up recipes, you know the tech has hit a level of mainstream use that's genuinely new. It's actually useful today.
Okay, so if the tech is so useful, what's the big deal? Well, to really get a grip on the economics, you've got to understand what it actually takes to build and run these incredible tools. And it's really a story of two completely different stages.
So, how in the world do you cook up something like ChatGPT? Well, first you need a mind-boggling amount of data, basically scraped from a huge chunk of the internet. Then comes the really heavy lifting, the training. This is where you use these massive farms of computer chips, GPUs, to just churn through all that data 24/7 for weeks, sometimes months. What you get at the end is the model itself, which is really just one enormous file. And then finally, there's inference. That's the part where you or I actually ask the model a question.
And this, right here, is where the economics just get wild. Just look at the difference. Training a model takes tens of thousands of GPUs running nonstop for months. The cost is, well, it's astronomical. But actually using that model, that inference part, only takes a few GPUs for a couple of seconds. The difference in cost is it's staggering.
And that's the key takeaway here. Almost all the money, all the insane expense, is in that initial training phase. We're talking about a price tag so high that literally only a handful of companies on the entire planet can even afford a seat at the table.
Which brings us to this huge economic puzzle. If it costs billions of dollars to train these things, how in the world is your subscription to one of the most powerful AIs ever created only, $20 a month? The math just doesn't seem to add up, right?
Well, here's the secret sauce. Your $20, it doesn't come close to covering the actual cost. The company is probably spending $35 or more just to give you that service. So where does that extra $15 come from? That's a subsidy. It's coming straight out of the deep pockets of venture capitalists who are pouring billions into these companies, all betting on picking the one that will dominate the future.
Now, if this whole model sounds a little familiar, it's because it absolutely is. This is the classic Uber or Grab playbook, right? Burn through mountains of investor cash to offer a service that's way cheaper than it should be, get everybody hooked, kill the competition, and then, once you own the market, you start to slowly crank up the prices.
And this isn't just happening with one or two companies. To see the full picture, we've got to zoom out and look at the whole ecosystem, because what's happening is basically a modern-day gold rush.
In this gold rush, you've basically got three types of players. Up at the top, you've got the shovel sellers. Think NVIDIA, the ones making the chips. And let me tell you, they are making an absolute fortune. They're the only ones who are really profitable. Then in the middle, you have the gold miners, like OpenAI, who are building the big models. Spoiler alert, they're unprofitable. And then you've got the new prospectors, all the startups building apps on top of the models. And yeah, you guessed it, also unprofitable.
And these valuations, they are just nuts. Let's take OpenAI, probably the most famous gold miner out there. Its valuation is a jaw-dropping $157 billion. And remember, this is a company that is openly and deeply unprofitable.
So what about those new prospectors? Well, a lot of them are what people in the industry call GPT wrappers. Basically, they're not building the engine themselves. They take a super powerful engine like GPT and they build a fancy, specialized new car body around it for a very specific job, and then they sell that.
And this hype, it trickles all the way down the food chain. Take a company like Cursor, which is a really popular AI tool for coders. It's built on top of other companies' AIs, and its valuation is $9 billion.
Investors are making a huge bet that it'll capture that market. And, say it with me now, it's also unprofitable.
And once you see this wrapper model, you'll start seeing it everywhere. There are startups popping up for AI in medicine, AI for filing your taxes, AI for education. But a lot of the time, if you look under the hood, they're just a really slick interface that takes your request and passes it on to a big model like GPT-4 to do the actual work.
Okay, so let's put all the pieces together. On one hand, we have this revolutionary, genuinely useful technology. But on the other hand, it's surrounded by a market built on a tower of unprofitable companies with sky-high valuations, all propped up by investor money. So what happens when the music stops? When that investor cash starts to run out?
You know, the CEO of OpenAI pretty much laid it all out there. He basically said that the core business of just running their current AI models, that cheap inference part, is actually sustainable. The problem, the real cash inferno, is this relentless, incredibly expensive arms race to train the next bigger, better model. That's the black hole that's sucking in all the money.
For now, the party is absolutely still raging. Investor money just keeps flooding into the industry, pumping up these valuations and paying for our cheap subscriptions. But look, that free-flowing cash can't last forever. Eventually, those investors are going to come knocking, and they're going to want to see a return on those billions.
So what's the most likely endgame here? Well, a really good historical parallel is the dot-com bubble back in the late 90s. When that bubble burst, the internet didn't just vanish. Of course not. It became even more important to our daily lives. But a whole lot of those high-flying companies from that era, they disappeared completely. The technology was real, but many of the businesses built purely on hype just weren't.
And that leaves us with the big, multi-billion-dollar question. There's zero doubt that AI technology is here to stay. It's going to change everything. But are the companies and their insane valuations here to stay? What does this industry even look like when the investor subsidies dry up, when prices have to reflect the true cost, and when making a profit isn't just a nice idea for the future, but an actual requirement to survive?